I tried to find a prop or a costume piece or something that would work for this, but I don't really have any swords that match Amande's. I don't have any jewelry that really fits that looks like the hearts that she has on her neck. I don't have any really wide brim hats that would work, straw hat behind me notwithstanding. And it's just like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about that. Um, some of them I can find props for, like I did with Katakuri, or the candy canes with Sparrow, but a little harder to do for some of them. Although I do have one in mind for Cracker. No, it's not crackers. Or firecrackers, or whatever else you want to go with in that idea. It's a pretzel for his sword, because I'm a dork. So, so this is kind of the first one on the Charlotte siblings list. It is like, I'm talking about her more because I like her out of, nepotism and favoritism, as opposed to, like, she's not super involved in, like, all the plot points that happen. I mean, like, she's there for a good chunk of the plot points that happen throughout Totland, but she herself, she's not a sweet commander. She's not like Brule, who's, super involved and interacts with the Straw Hats a bunch, or like Sparrow, who ends up having a whole additional arc set up in, in Wano and everything. It's not, she's not quite like them, but I just really like Amande and everything, and I've always liked her design and just her, I love her personality. Is basically like, she cares very much about her family, but she's also like, I want to cut things very slowly so that way they're in a lot of pain before they die. I'm like, you need therapy, lady. So, I'm going to be talking about Demon Lady Charlotte Amande, who is the third daughter and the seventh child of the Charlotte family. So she's one of the older ones up in the top. And she is part of the quadruplet set that is Monde, then Amande, then Hache, and Efile. Sorry if I butchered those names. They are Big Mom's four oldest snake neck daughters. She has another set of twin snake neck children later on, and then she has like one of the younger sons, Wiro, I think. He's a snake neck as well. But these are her oldest set in this regard. And Amande seems to be the main one out of that, out of that four that we end up seeing the most of. We see two of the other ones, and one of them, the youngest one, we only get like sketch art of Efele. These are all like French nut names, so I'm pretty sure I'm butchering them. Amande is the only one that I'm fairly certain I'm pronouncing it right, just because it's very similar to my name. And well, Amanda means lovable and stuff like that. Amande is just a type of nut. I think it's supposed to be almond or something like that, is like what it's referencing. But I could be very wrong in that regard. But she is a snake neck human hybrid, and she is one of the officers in Big Mom's crew, as are most of the older children. And she is also the Minister of Nuts on Nuts Island, which I went over Nuts Island a bit when I did the islands list and everything. And I'll talk about it a little bit more here because we actually get to see her on Nuts Island. She's one of the few that we actually get to see interact with their specific island. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. Amande is 47 years old, and therefore she probably has memories of, Big Mom being on Rox's crew. And as I will point out, but at the very least, Cracker and Brule, they have memories of, Katakuri before he started wearing his scarf. So Amande would have memories of Katakuri before he starts wearing his scarf all the time to cover his eel mouth. So she would be one of the older ones that is like very aware of why he wears the scarf, and kind of goes along with the whole of, him being like the perfect older brother type of a thing. And in that regard, but so that kind of sets up a little bit of that there. So she is one of the ones that does not have a devil fruit. She's going to be one of the few on this list that I'm going to talk about that does not have a devil fruit. I think she might be the only one on the list of the Charlotte children that I'm going to talk about for these videos that does not have a devil fruit, because Perospero, Katakuri, they do. I think most of the other ones do as well. She is the only one that does not. So if any of the others fall in the water, she's the one that has to save them. And we got so many different devil fruits that were paramecia based devil fruits that were introduced in Totland, which is not a bad thing. And there was like a huge variety there. Like with Wano, we got so many like ancient zones and mythical zones and stuff like that were introduced in Wano. And in Totland, we just got all these paramecia devil fruits, which was very fun, and it was very interesting seeing all the different paramecias that Oda had come up with and such. But for Amande, it's like, no, she doesn't have a devil fruit. She has a sword, which is Shiryo, Shirauo. I don't remember if they ever actually say it in the anime, but it's a Nodachi, and it is a Meito grade, so it's one of the very high quality swords. And the name of it actually means ice fish. And she just uses this to massacre a bunch of knights. She uses it to cut apart King Balm. She uses this to destroy one of like Perospero's candy walls. So she's very good with this sword. And her technique is, what is the sense of killing another if their life ends instantly? I only slice my foes at the most painfully excruciating of speeds. So she's just like, yeah, you're gonna die, but I'm gonna do it really slowly so you feel me slicing through your body. And I'm like, you have issues, woman. But I'm like, also, that's just one of those things where I'm just like, okay, that's kind of cool. She's like, no, I'm not gonna have a devil fruit. I'm gonna have a really slow but powerful sword swing. And she pulls it off great. She pulls that off awesomely. So I'm fine with that. We see her do multiple, fights and stuff like that throughout the course of Totland, but, little bits here and there. Going into her history, as I said, Amande is 47 years old, so she was born 47 years ago to Big Mom and the Snake Neck Man as part of the quadruplets. Sorry. And we really don't know that much about it. It, may have been someone that like Big Mom met while she was on Rox's crew, since I don't remember if we get an exact time frame how long she was on Rox's crew. But she would have, maybe been around that way, traveling around a bunch. Maybe it had been one of the times when she was not on Rox's crew and then went back and forth and whatever. And Amande, as probably a lot of the other, older Charlotte children, probably spent most of her childhood possibly on the Rox's pirate ship, depending on how often Rox was fine with having kids on his ship, which maybe, I don't know. Given how constantly Big Mom was pregnant, that's a possibility. That Rox is just like, yeah, they're fine, let them scamper around. Since we don't know really very little about Rox's personality, that is quite the possibility that was fine with him, but they probably grew up mostly on Whole Cake Island, or what would become Whole Cake Island. At that point in time, she was probably around when all of the events happened with Brule, and her getting sliced, and then Katakuri taking up this mantle of being the perfect older brother and everything. So that's probably, very important things that happened in like what she saw, and that may have been one of the reasons why she became so strong. And it's like, yeah, I got a lot of siblings that are going to have devil fruits or that have devil fruits, so I'm going to not have I'm not going to have a devil fruit. I'm just going to get strong in my own right. And as do probably the majority of the high-ranking members of Big Mom's crew, she probably has observation and armament hockey, and she probably uses that to a degree when she's slicing through her victims, through her enemies. But for the most part, we don't really get to see her demonstrate that, I don't believe. But I just, I like that setup for her. Really, the introduction that we get for Amande is that when a bunch of the kids are off, or a bunch of the crew are off, gathering up all of the different ingredients and everything that they need for putting in Sanji's wedding cake, we see Amande goes to the island where she is getting eggs for the wedding cake. And I'm assuming that this is not one of Big Mom's own islands that she's going to, because she just, destroys the island. Amande just destroys the island and, massacres the knights that are guarding the eggs, and then takes the eggs with her. And I'm like, well, if it was Kimi Island is the egg island in Totland, I believe, and like if she was on Kimi Island, they would just give her the eggs. That wouldn't be a problem. So it has to be on an island outside of Totland by that logic, because has been demonstrated by a good chunk of the siblings that we see in Totland for the Charlotte siblings, they do seem to care about the citizens of Totland. And while they may not necessarily be able to protect them from Mama doing the leave or life stuff, they try to protect them when, Big Mom goes on a hunger rampage. They try to protect them if, like a pirate attack, Streisand, even Streisand himself, used his, cook powers to, change all of, Whole Cake Chateau into cake itself, so that way it would land on Sweet City and not destroy Sweet City and not kill all the civilians there, So the children still seem to care about the people who live in Totland. And, and to a degree are like fairly popular with the people who live in Totland, because they protect them from Big Mom. When Big Mom goes on her hunger rampages. But we don't really see too much beyond that. We see Amande there just like gathering up all of the different, gathering the eggs and then heading back to Totland, which I'm like, okay, that's kind of an interesting way of, introducing yourself. And she's just like, I have the eggs, I'm heading home now. And pretty much her entire, her personality is very like stoic and not really showing a huge amount of emotions throughout the course of time that we see her. But she's, she does care about her siblings. We see that as well. And we'll kind of see that demonstrated a little bit in this next moment, because we have it when Luffy and Nami are making their way to Whole Cake Chateau. What ends up, they're waiting outside in the area after Luffy has had his fight with Sanji, which is after he has his fight with Cracker and everything. Amande, along with like this other huge amount of several of the other Charlotte siblings, along with a bunch of the chess soldiers and such like that, they show up and they start attacking Nami and Luffy. And one of the things, and this is where we get like the first kind of demonstration of her skill, is we see her, she berates King Bomb, asks him why he's working for the Straw Hats. He tries to explain, and then she just takes her sword and slices through him very slowly. And in the anime, they make sure to show you that it's not a like a Zoro cut. It is just like very slowly slicing through King Balm. And it's like she wants to make it as slow and as painful as possible. And I'm just like, okay. And she does that, and then after that, after she's finished off Bomb, she goes over to where Nami is, because at this point in time, Galette has captured Nami with her butter powers. I'll talk about that more when I talk about Galette later. But Amande is the one that like kind of searches Nami and finds the Viver card that was given to Nami by Lola, and they realize that it is Lola's Viver card. They also see that Lola is written on it, and their initial thought, a bunch of the siblings are, because Montdor is there when this happens, as is I think a couple of, I think the other two Snake Neck children that are the twins from later on, along with a couple of like Opera and some of his brothers are there. They're all there when this happens, and like they've got Luffy captured and such, and now they've got Nami captured, and they're asking Nami like, what did you do to Lola? And they do seem genuinely concerned about what happened to Lola, because they've been worried about Lola ever since she left. And as much as Mama might be angry at Lola for the fact that she left and everything happened with the giants, Amande and the other siblings do seem to be genuinely worried about her. So, there's not, they do seem to be genuinely worried that, like, maybe Nami and the Straw Hats hurt Lola, and that's why they have the Weaver card. Even though Nami tries to explain, no, Lola was our friend, she gave this to us, and everything. And then they take they don't believe her, and then they take Nami and Luffy to the castle, where they, lock them in the book prison in the library. From there, we see that Amande, along with a bunch of the others, including Montdor and several others, are all part of this meeting to just discuss what's going on with the Sanji retrieval team. It's like, okay, Nami and Luffy have been captured, and then they also, it's just like, okay, well, we're trying to find Pedro and Brooke and, Chopper and Carrot, and like going over this stuff at that point in time to determine like what else they need to do. But we don't really get too much more of that night. And then on the day of the wedding, they have it that Amande is there during the wedding, and is there like socializing and such like that. And of course, she, as is pretty much I think all of the other older siblings, are pretty much all the siblings that are not like, I don't know, 12 and under, I don't know, are aware of like this plot to assassinate the Vinsmokes, and assassinate all of them and use pudding to do it and everything. They're all part of this setup, and so Amande is part of this as well. And so she's there kind of like enjoying the wedding and socializing and everything. And then, Pudding and Sanji make their entrance, and then Luffy bursts out of the cake and just chaos ensues. Everything happens with Jinbei resigning and all of that stuff. And then, of course, the fire tag pirates and, everything that happens there with the photograph and all of that. And, we see, like, shots of Amande in the manga, panels in the manga and shots of her in the anime as she's, like, fighting or trying to stop something or whatever the case ends up being. But the next real time that we see her is that when the fortress is destroyed, when Whole Cake Chateau is toppled by the Tamate Bako blowing up, Amande is, she's kind of just like watching inside, or no, this is when she is watching, when they're watching everything, when Mama is attacking Beji. When she's attacking Beji's big father form, his giant castle form. She's like, well, if we destroy it enough, then everyone inside should be thrown out. So they just like allow Mama to like assault the fortress and everything. And then everything happens because, all the Vinsmokes come out and they start attacking the Charlottes. And Amande is like part of the group that's trying to like fight against them. And then that's when the Tamate Bako blows up and knocks, makes this Whole Cake Chateau topple over. And, she falls with it, but she's fine, because like they're saved by like Stroyson and his ability and everything, as I mentioned and will mention multiple times. And of course, this collapses and everything. And then we see some bits because like I think we see her, she survives the whole Cake Chateau falling over and everything. And, she is, I think, aware of the plan that goes on with, Pudding showing up and being like, okay, I'm going to go and make another cake and everything like that. So that way we can, calm down Mama from her hunger rampage and everything like that. So I believe that Amande is aware of this. And then, really the next time that we see Amande is when Amande, a bunch of the Tart ships, the Tart fleet, are on their way to deal with the Thousand Sunny, when they're surrounding the Thousand Sunny, when Mama is attacking the Thousand Sunny. And, Perospero has, like, candy coated it. And Katakuri and Luffy or fighting on deck and all of that stuff happens at the same time, where, you know, Pedro sacrifices himself, causes the explosion, allows them to escape. So Amande is kind of like the, did my brother just get blown up by a leopard or a jaguar, whichever one it is that Pedro is. I can never remember which is which. Lucci's a leopard, but I don't remember if they made Pedro a jaguar or a leopard off the top of my head. Don't know. And what ends up happening is, of course, she does see that Perospero ends up being fine, and she witnesses as the Sunny, you know, Kude bursts and, you know, starts flying, you know, over the tops of their ships and manages to escape. We don't see her for a little while, but then we do later end up seeing her at Nuts Island, which is her island, where she is the minister. We see her there, and she is trying to dissuade Mama from destroying the island, because Mama, of course, has found Nuts Island and is trying to rampage because she's trying to find the wedding cake, and that's causing all of the citizens of the island to run in terror and everything. And I believe that Amande does see that Luffy is there because he pops out of the mirror world with Brule. And then that, of course, results in this, you know, kind of chase scene where, you know, Amande is part of, like, the ones chasing after Luffy to try to save Brule and to try to capture Luffy. And, like, we see her, I think Perospero makes a wall to try to trap Luffy, and then Luffy gets by that, and then Amande just, like, slices through the wall. Because, I mean, Katakuri's candy walls and candy creations, as I went over in his video, aren't really anything to laugh at. They're pretty dang strong, given what they end up accomplishing at various points in time throughout the story. It's just that they're strong opponents going up against them, so that's why they get taken out. That's why Luffy can take out one of them with, like, his Red Hawk, and in this case, it's never gone over, but I just have, like, this headcanon theory that, like, as they were all growing up and learning how to use all of their different devil fruits and, you know, hockey and everything else, that all of the different Charlotte siblings just kind of trained against each other to get stronger and stronger. And that, like, Amande is used to having to, like, cut through, you know, Perospero's candy walls as ways of training, or cut through, you know, Katakuri's mochi, and different things like that. Not that she would be able to, like, defeat Perospero or defeat Katakuri, but she could hold her own against either one of them for probably at least a little while. Given that she might be the strongest sibling we see that doesn't have a devil fruit. So we see that. We see her, you know, trying to capture Luffy, and he manages to escape with Brule again. I know that there's a moment while he's running around Nuts Island, because he uses Brule as, like, as a shield against the other siblings. Because we also see that a bunch of, or at least two of Amande's sisters are on the island with her. I think we see Monde and Eflel, I don't remember. I think we see them on the island too, and, like, Luffy running around trying to get away from them while everything is going on, and, like, he uses Brule as, like, a shield against them. And I think Amande is the only one out of her direct sibling group that is a minister of an island, and the other three may just stay on the island and help her with administrative purposes and everything like that. But I mean, they seem kind of strong too. I mean, most of the Charlotte siblings can probably hold their own, at least to a certain degree, depending on who it is they're fighting. Maybe not so much against Shanks, and I'm pretty sure that if Luffy wanted to, he could definitely take out a good number of the Charlotte siblings if he was at, like, full health and being able to go up against them before he, you know, had to start having problems, like, against Perospero or Katakuri or Cracker, like he did earlier in the story. But we kind of see that, and then we cut away, and then when we come back to Nuts Island, we see that Amande is actually kind of trying to help start cleaning up some of the rubble. She's, like, slicing through some of the rubble to make it easier to move and to make sure that there's no one trapped underneath it. We hear her listening to the concerns of her citizens, the genuine concerns of her citizens about whether or not they're safe under Mama's protection, because it's like, as I pointed out in previous videos about Big Mom, it's like, If I had to choose to live under either Kaido or Big Mom, I would choose Big Mom. But I would want to be on an island that Big Mom has very little reason to be on in the first place. So that way I would be much less likely to be affected by any of her hunger pangs or anything like that. Like, I would not want to live on Whole Cake Island itself. And as amazing as Cacao Island would be, I probably wouldn't want to live there either, because Big Mom is probably likely to visit Cacao Island. But there would be other islands where it's just like, I'm going to go live on one of those islands if I can, because it's like far away from Mama. And like, she listens to like the citizens' pleas and worries about like the type of, if they are really safe being in Totland anymore. Given the fact that Luffy and the others cause a ton of damage to Totland, along with Big Mom causing the damage herself, and then the Blackbeard pirate showing up with Kuzan and Van Augur, and them, freezing Cracker and taking Pudding, safety could be a little bit of a, it's like, how safe are we? Well, maybe not that safe in this regard. So all of that's going on. And then we don't really see anything else of her in the Totland arc, but she is in the Wano arc. We see her as part of the Charlotte, the Big Mom pirate crew that are heading to Wano and everything, on top of the Big Mom Ashanter. And, Amande is part of this group, and, as they, try to climb up the waterfall the first time, then they get knocked off by King, and then they fall, and Mama ends up in Wano, as I went over in her video, and Parasparrow's video. And then they then try to climb the waterfall again, and then get knocked off again, that time by Marco. And I mean, it is stated at the end of Totland that the Marines report to the other Marines, and it's just like, oh yes, we saw the Big Mom pirate ship, and it was leaving Wano. After like a certain amount of time, it left Wano. So I'm like, assumedly the rest of them are still alive. They survived the ship falling off the waterfall a second time and survived, and she would have been one of the ones on the ship that is able to at least grab the other ones that are devil fruit users and get them back up on the ship so they're safe, considering that a good chunk of them are devil fruit users. I mean, out of all of the 85 kids, most of them actually don't have devil fruits. Because, like, a lot of the younger ones really don't. Because I think the youngest one that has a devil fruit is Pudding. And then, but, like, a lot of the younger ones, beyond, like, Flampe and Pudding, aren't really on the crew yet. They're not officers on the crew. They're not really in, they're just still being, like, the kids that get pampered at the palace to a degree. And get, doted on by Mama when she goes into her mother mode. But a good chunk of the siblings don't actually have devil fruit powers. The majority of the ones that we spend a huge amount of time with in the story have devil fruit powers, because that makes them interesting ones for the Straw Hats to have to deal with. But like, Amande is one of the main ones that they kind of interact with that does not have a devil fruit power, as I went over already. So, I would like to see Amande again. I really like her design. I don't know why, but I just really like her design. I don't know. Don't ask me why. I just do. I just really like how Oda designed her and set her up and all of that stuff. She, even amongst her siblings, she has a very, unique design, but a lot of the Charlotte siblings have unique designs in their own way. She seems to be pretty smart, fairly level-headed, in regards to how she handles different problems that are placed in front of her. There's not really too much else there. A little bit of the trivia about Amande. As I said, Amande is French for almond, which I mentioned. And she is referred to as Demon Lady as her honorific, which is just a reference to something, to a Kifujin reference in Japanese. She is possibly inspired by an onryo, or a Japanese folklore, due to her thin and pale appearance, long hair, sadistic nature, and the epitaph of the Demon Lady. So that's that. Her height and attire consisting of the long dress and the wide brim hat, are reminiscent of the urban legends of a, I am going to butcher this name and I apologize, Hachishakusama. Don't ask me, it doesn't elaborate. I'm assuming it's a reference to like whatever type of a folklore demon type thing is from Japan or something nearby, and that's kind of a reference to what she looks like. So there's not too much else. She is voted to be, she is the second favorite older sister of all of the different Charlotte older siblings. She's the second favorite older sister, just after Smoothie. So she's pretty popular among her younger siblings and everything. But that's about what I have here for Amande. I figured this was going to be a shorter video than probably the rest of, than some of the other ones are going to be end up being. I mean, Monteur and Galette might be a little bit around the same length, but we'll see how much rambling I do there. I don't know if we'll end up seeing her again. We might get something where we cut back to Totland and see something there. We know that she went to Wano, so if we ever get an update on like what happened to them at Wano, that will be a little bit more of information there. Whether or not she's returning and just having to give the bad news of like we can't find Mama to the rest of them, and that would just cause a lot of panic amongst the civilians, possibly, you know, since we haven't gotten the information as to whether or not Mama is dead or even if Perospero is dead. You know, because if Mama is dead and all the homies are still alive, then that's good. At the very least, there's some there for like protection in Totland that way. But if Big Mom is not dead, then it's like, okay, but how are they going to deal with that? She's definitely not a Yonko anymore, and while she can still command a fair amount of power, she doesn't quite have the title to go with it anymore. So we'll have to see what ends up happening there. And that's what I have. I was trying to think if I'd ever seen any that were like Amande figurines, but like if I ever found one that was like a decent price, I'd probably want it, since I do really like her design. Although that would be quite the accomplishment if someone managed to get figurines of every single one of the Charlotte siblings. That would be an accomplishment in and of itself. I know like they have Katakuri ones, and I think there's Perospero ones. I know there's Pudding figurines, and I think there's figurines of like Smoothie and stuff like that. But like I would like an Amande figurine. That would be nice. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!